Actually, thank you very much for the invitation. Glad to be back. Heard your conclusion as well as the previous panelists, referring on the 6 months ahead or a year ahead, or on the geopolitical issues and challenges we are about to face. So there are two wars, ongoing wars, in the Middle East, and of course the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. And we are about, maybe, to see a conflict in Asia. Taking energy into perspective, I'd just like to mention that we started the energy transition a few years ago with a vision to change the course of the economy after 70 years of coal. So moving from fossil fuels to renewables, basically, for two reasons. One is the climate change itself, to tackle this, and of course to provide cheap electricity to the household. Now we are facing a major and huge challenge that is not about to change. It's about to remain and keep things being unstable. And this is the very geopolitical aspect of things worldwide. So we need to make sure we take this into consideration, as well as other factors that are involved into security as a notion within the energy transition.
So what about the transition for Greece? In practical terms, the strategy for the next, well, you have to think long-term policy for energy always. What is the mix going to be, and how quickly do you think the transition can happen?
Greece at the moment is within the first 5 countries worldwide in deployment of renewables and, of course, delivering on the energy transition. The energy transition is about 3 pillars. It's about decarbonizing the mix, it's about digitizing the mix, and of course decentralizing, meaning delivering renewables. So Greece is delivering, and I believe we are quite ahead of schedule, if I could say so. I just want to mention 3 factors that come in mind and relate to the previous panel as well as to the security of energy. So one would be, if we all recall, back in 2023, what happened in Denmark. There was a cyber attack in 22 companies, delivering on critical infrastructure, and that was the largest ever worldwide. If we go back to 2019, Iranian-backed Yemens were fighting against Saudi and bombed 2 oil processing distilleries, and then oil production fell by 5.7 million barrels per day. So we can see that security is not only about war, it's about asymmetric geopolitical factors and, of course, cybersecurity. So again, coming back to your question about Greece delivering, we are moving in decarbonizing the mix, delivering renewables, and of course, strengthening further the digitization and cybersecurity. And that's what we do within PPC Group, having a strategy not only in Greece, but in the broader Southeastern Europe region. We are the incumbent in the country. We are active in Greece. Now in Romania, of course, post the Enel acquisition, we are the largest company in Southeastern Europe. We are present in Bulgaria, Albania, Croatia. Recently, we made an agreement in Italy. So we are becoming a regional.
But can you be a little bit more specific about the decarbonization portion of this? We can come on to the cyber and security, other aspects of security. But in the decarbonization, what are the practical investments that you're putting in place, and what share of energy resource, of the energy mix, can that realistically aspire to be over what time frame?
There is there are the institutional agreements or decisions that are taken by the EU and of course the Greek government, and we are targeting 65% of renewables within the next few years.
But is that mainly solar in Greece's case, or is it?
It is a mix. Maybe solar will prevail a bit, but this is normal because, if you go up to the Nordics, it's more windy. If you go south, it's more sunny.
No, you have sun here.
Yeah. So, and this is a very good point, because we need to, there is stochastic production and output on renewables. So we need to make sure we build more energy systems, and that's what we do. And we need to make sure we deliver on grid infrastructure. And one thing I want to mention, if you look at Euroelectric's recent study, Grid for Speed, we need to invest 67 billion per year until 2050 for the next 25 years to make sure we support the energy transition on a European level. And why this is important, because as you said, if we produce more solar here and more wind northbound, we need to make sure we can actually transport and move this electricity efficiently. And this is about also digitizing and protecting.
But it feeds through, for example, into the transport infrastructure, what sort of cars people are driving, and we're talking geostrategic security. China is so competitive in electric vehicles. How do you see that developing? And is that something you have to be concerned about, or do you just worry about providing the power and doesn't matter what it's feeding into?
Actually, I believe in an inclusive form of understanding or encompassing all factors. And if you take into consideration that China at the moment is the sole producer of green metals, and we need 35 million tons per year in Europe to proceed with the energy transition, we cannot ignore this. I was recently in China, and if you look at the fleet of cars, for example, in Shenzhen, 55% are electric cars. This is the future. But we need to take a part of that value chain in Europe. And that's what the EU is trying and struggling to actually adjust. China is and might and will be a main player for batteries and green metals, but at the same time, Europe needs to catch up. So we cannot ignore that.
Talk a little bit about this geographical point of Europe. We just heard it in the previous panel in a way, the centrality of Greece in many questions. Greece is a sort of being a mediator between various players. How does that translate into the energy sphere, and particularly renewable energy?
Greece is in the crossroad. Actually, it's in the borderline between East and West. At the same time, Greece is a stable democracy. And if you look at the European level, it's a strong, stable democracy. In my view, Greece is delivering on the coalitions, NATO, EU, whatever. And energy is a huge opportunity for the country that is being deployed. It's not a vision, it's happening. So Greece is becoming a local superpower in terms of energy. Why? Because we are delivering on renewables, we are a crossroad for grids, and of course we are a crossroad between the Middle East, taking into account, for example, Egypt, the whole South Mediterranean, and the northbound neighboring countries in the Balkan region or the Southeastern Europe region. And this is exactly the way we view it at PPC Group and our expansion plans, which is a natural field of expansion for us to deliver in our plans.
So could you imagine, or do you have a strategic view for your company of what share of your business will be Greek-centered and what share will be regional? You're presumably undergoing a transition in that respect too, with a greater share of regional importance in your mix. Give us a sense. Can you put some numbers on that of how it looks?
Maybe I'd like to put it from another perspective. So Greece is a geography, but at the moment, the way the European electricity market is evolving, having clusters, different clusters, and is being unified, we cannot look at state-driven geographies. So we are looking at our natural cluster, which is the Southeastern European cluster. So if we have a mix, the strategy is dynamic. It is an ongoing process, but if we have a mix that, for example, Greece accounts for 50% of the operations in the near future, that could be a case. But again, this is quite dynamic, and we see how it evolves, because depends on grids, depends on supply chain and how quick we can move into these countries, and of course depends on capital allocation. And this again is an ongoing process.
But does it depend also on your competition? I mean, who is the competition that you run up against in this expansion? You presumably bump up against others who also aspire to this sort of regional role.
Yeah.
Which is healthy. I mean, everybody is, for the consumer, it's very good to have competition.
It's absolutely healthy. Regarding the generation part, we are all working together, so it's not a matter of competition because there is enough space for everybody. On the retail side of things, to the end customer, yes, there is competition. It's truly healthy. And if you look at even today, pricing levels, PPC is delivering on setting the right prices. What I want to say is that competition is global at the moment, and for us, competition is European. So we want to make sure we stay on the incumbent level in Southeastern Europe, and we keep expanding.
Final question, and then we're going to go to the coffee break, much delayed. From the point of view, we've been talking strategically, we've been looking at it from a very broad perspective, but if you look at it from the bottom up, from the point of view of the consumer, consumers, not just in Greece, but everywhere, have been worried about prices, have been worried about energy security for themselves. What do you think the prospect is for the consumer in all this transition and amid the geopolitical uncertainties that we've been talking about?
I guess I like that you mentioned bottom-up. So if you look at from a bottom-up approach, there is a very simple answer, mid or long term. There is no cheaper form of electricity than renewables. So the cheaper kilowatt hour at the moment, and it will stay like this, is it's a green kilowatt hour. So what we need to make sure we do is that we deliver this kilowatt hour to the end consumer because it's the cheapest form. So the real challenge here is to make sure that we build battery storage systems and grids. Why? Because if we don't fight the stochastic nature of renewables, we might end up with balancing markets. Not being too technical, we might end up, when renewables not being able to produce, to have very expensive electricity. So again, the consumer, the household will benefit from this, from the energy transition. Actually, we are benefiting as we speak, but we need to make sure that this is sustainable and this is long-term.
And do you think you still have a job to do to persuade consumers that this is the right way to go? Because there's a sort of backlash at the moment in some areas about the green transition, and that you see this in the American election, you've seen it in the election campaigns across Europe, that some parties anyway are saying, well, this has all gone too far, consumers don't like it, let's slow down.
Yeah, it's always like this. When there's a change, people tend to have cycles. You know, there are cycles that are going up, cycles that are going down. At the moment, there is a social aspect of resistance. We don't view that in Greece because being a stable democracy with a stable government at the moment, we don't see a problem. But again, I believe that this is a constant job that we need to keep doing. Everybody that is in energy needs to work on convincing constantly the end consumer that this is the only and true way forward.